I am Aditya Sridhar. I secured a 99.99 percentile in CET 2020 with a rank 5. We also have with us Ankit Thakker, ARR 2 in CET 2020 with a percentile of 99.99. Today we're going to discuss how we approach the verbal section in the CET. Verbal section was a strong point for both of us. So we are going to share some insights on how to tackle the verbal section. So first, let's look at the topics that have been coming in the verbal section and the breakup of marks. So RC comes for 15 marks out of the 50 marks in the verbal section, and it is the single largest topic. So in the RC, we have 2 to 3 RCs that come, and it ranges from easy to difficult. So to tackle RCs, what I used to do is I used to read the passage first and then go for the questions. So the other approach is that you read the questions first and then read the RC looking for particular facts to answer the questions. So the thing is that if you're stronger in RC, you can follow the approach that I followed. That will be faster. But if you're weaker in RCs, you can only solve the fact-based questions. But the important part here is to not leave any RC completely, because you will have some sitters in the RC. There'll be vocab questions that have been coming in the CET, synonym, antonym, meaning of words, interpretation of some phrases. So make sure that you do not skip these questions because they can be solved in 20 to 30 seconds. Also, you should skim RCs before deciding whether to attempt them or leave them. So when you skim an RC, you must look for if the topic is familiar to you, if the language is easy and understandable. If this is the case, you should attempt the RC and the subsequent questions that are fact-based and inference-based. But if it's looking tough, you can directly go to the fact-based, vocab-based questions. Ankit, tell us about the other topics of the verbal section.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different question types that come in the verbal section, and that also keeps changing year over year in the CT exam. But I'll just go through some of the common question types that are asked usually. So firstly, we have para jumbles or jumbled sentences, as you call them. It comes for around 5 to 6 marks, which is basically you'll get one set of 5 or 6 sentences. And that is either of a medium difficulty level or a slightly harder difficulty level. So that is something that you will have to decide whether you want to go into it and whether it is appropriate to spend 5 to 6 minutes on jumbled sentences, which you can either utilize in a DI or a puzzle. So that is a trade-off you'll have to make during the exam itself. And even I used to do that. I would keep the para jumble on the side, and later when I would attempt a puzzle or a DI, then I would decide whether it makes sense to go back to a para jumble or continue with the puzzle. So yeah, para jumbles are quite commonly asked. Then you have other basic grammar type questions. You have fill in the blanks. You have error correction in sentences. So all these question types do not take very long, as in you should not be spending more than a minute on these questions. It's very simple. Either you know the answer or you don't know the answer. So don't spend too much time if you're confused between 2 or 3 options. Just mark something and move on, because most likely that confusion will not get resolved even if you're putting in more time in trying to clear that confusion. Then also synonym antonym based questions come apart from RC. Also it comes in single question type questions as well. You get vocab based questions as well, where they might just give you a word in a sentence or just a word in isolation, and they'll ask you for a meaning. You get phrase replacement, where you have to understand or you have to know the meaning of phrases and how it has been used in a sentence. And word interchange is another common question type, where you'll have to interchange words in a sentence so that it fits contextually. We also have inference type questions. Probable starters is another common question type that is asked. So yeah, there are many different question types that can be asked, and this keeps changing every year, but this is a basic or general idea.
Yeah. So the important part to note is that in the verbal section, there are no shortcuts. So be wary of anyone that tells you about any kind of shortcuts or tricks in the verbal section, because there are none. So what we've tried to do in our course is tell you how we 99.99 percentile approach a particular verbal questions. So I've taken the RC section and the para jumbles in the course. So what I did is for RC, I've talked to you guys as to how I eliminated options for the RC, how I picked the right answer. how I selected a particular RC, whether I should attempt it or not. For parajumble, similarly, it was the approach or the thinking process that I've shared, because there are no shortcuts. So I've tried to say what was the first step that goes through my mind when I looked at a parajumble, what hints or what clues that I used to look for to solve a parajumble completely. So these are the kind of insights that you can expect from the verbal section of our course.
I think it's very important to understand that yeah, there are no shortcuts, but once you develop some kind of a framework or some kind of a strategy for these kind of questions, it will definitely help you not only reduce time in these kind of questions, but also help improve upon your accuracy, because the verbal section and the critical reasoning section are traditionally low accuracy section if you compare with a logical reasoning or a quant section. So, if you can develop some kind of a mental model or a framework that we have tried and mentioned in our course as well, it will definitely help you improve upon your accuracy and also solve these questions in a shorter time.
Yeah, the important part to note is that you in the exam you should not read a question and right there and then think what should I do, how should I solve the question. You should have some framework or strategy in mind to pick out certain clues to solve the question. You straight away when you read a question, you should look for A, B, C, and then solve the question. You should not be confused as to how to approach the question. So that is what we've covered in the course. Another important fact is that there are many easy questions in the verbal section. So a request to all aspirants as to not leave the verbal section completely. There are lots of YouTube videos where students have left the verbal section and ending up converting a college A, B, or C. But if you're targeting the top colleges, you should not leave the verbal section. There is an example from our team itself, Shreekanth Merugu, who left the verbal section completely in his first attempt, scored a 99.86 percentile, and could not convert his dream college. Whereas in the second attempt, he tried to find the simple questions in the verbal section, got about 20 to 25 marks in the verbal section, and could convert his dream college. So that is the difference the verbal section can make. Questions in the verbal section can be solved very easily. They do not take as much time as a quant or a LR question that take probably 45 seconds to 1 minute per question. Verbal questions can be solved in 30 seconds. So that is a big advantage you have in the verbal question. And typically in the past years, we've seen that at least 20 to 25 questions are on the easy level.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have this notion that you can just skip, not even for verbal in general, that if you're weak in one section, you can just skip that section and you can compensate for that from the other three sections and do well and get your top college. But it doesn't work out that way. You have to get into it and get into all four sections. You may not be very strong, say, in the verbal section. You may be average, but at least try and squeeze out those easy questions, grab onto those low hanging fruits and get done with them in a short time, like say 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and then move on to your stronger section or the sections that you're good at.
Okay, now so let us just talk through the strategies that we employed in the verbal section. So for me, verbal was one of my strongest points. So I used to give 35 minutes to verbal because I used to expect more than 40 marks in verbal. And when I used to approach the questions, I used to solve the whole section completely. So I used to not solve it in 2 rounds or 3 rounds, first the easy questions or something like that. And any question that came up, I used to give it at least 20 seconds and solve it right then and there. So it could be a RC question, it could be a parajumble. I used to attempt the question and solve the verbal section one go itself. How was it for you, Ankit?
Yeah, so I had a slightly different approach. So firstly, verbal for me was comparatively a stronger section. So I would always attempt it first and I would give it around 25 to 30 minutes. I did not cross more than 30 minutes for verbal in general. And yeah, I would also attempt all 50 questions. But my idea for approaching the verbal section was to get done with the easy questions first, which are basically single type questions, the grammar questions, the vocab based questions, the closed test, the synonym and antonym based questions. Get done with those in the flow of the paper. And while you're doing that, you will also come across your RCs and you will also come across your para jumbles. So just have a skim through that and read through that and get an idea as to which RC is tough, which RC is doable, which RC should be left or not done, not be done at all. Look at the para jumble and see whether it will take you 7-8 minutes or you can do it in 5 minutes. After I'm done with my first round, I would then make a choice whether I want to go back to an RC or maybe keep these RCs on hold, and maybe later after I do my DIs and I do my puzzles, and if I feel, say, the puzzle section is very tough and I'm able to solve only 1 or 2 puzzles, then I would say come back to the RCs and do the RCs, because it is very important to be flexible in the CT exam. That optimization procedure has to be bang on for you. So if you have to find a trade-off between comparable question types, say a 6-mark puzzle, a 6-mark DI, and a 6-mark RC, you have to be basically able to solve that set, which is going to take you lesser time. So if a puzzle is taking you 8 minutes, the DI is going to take you around 6 to 7 minutes, and your RC can be done in 6 minutes, then you'd come back to the RC and do that. So that is that kind of flexibility that I tried to find and try to establish during my CT prep, and I would follow through with that for the verbal section and the mocks in general. So yeah.
That's some great insight from AI2. So let us also tell the aspirants about our course, the Top Percentile course. The Top Percentile course is an initiative by six toppers of the Maharashtra CET 2020 exam. So we, as aspirants, we face the problem that there are a lot of strategies, shortcuts, tricks that are scattered here and there. What we've tried to do is bring this all together in one place, along with our self-taught and self-developed strategies that we made and implemented in the CET 2020 exam to a great result. So we all have taken the areas of our expertise. We both were strong in verbal, hence we've taken the verbal section. Anay, Vidhan were extremely strong in LR. They have taken the LR section. Anay was unbelievably good in the input-output questions. We were extremely in awe of the way he solved the input-output questions. So he has made a masterclass for input-output in our course. Similarly, Shreekanth was very good in DI. Harsh was very good in quant. So we've all taken up.
And Aditya was very good in abstract. You skipped yourself.
So we've all taken the areas of our strengths, and we've tried to tell the aspirants how we have solved that section, how we've solved that question type. So in a nutshell, it is every question of the CET, how they are being solved by a 99.99 percentiler.
Yeah, and we've got a overwhelming response for this so far, and we've received very good reviews. So yeah, that is about our course. We have added the links to the Google form, the Telegram link of our channel in the description box. So please check it out. And yeah, that's it from our side. Thanks to Chetan once again for having us. See you until next time.
All the best to you all.